Hey guys, Aqua here. So today I want to talk about Post-ALIN's Insight White Forest. So of course there's these 7 new cards that we're going to be playing with. The most notable of these of course is the Witches of the White Forest, which is a field spell that adds any White Forest monster to our hand, but locks us from summoning dark monsters from our extra deck. So it's a super powerful card. It makes the deck way more consistent. We don't have to run more copies of Diabellstar or Magistus Trozo and all that stuff to get more consistency, because this card gives us consistency. But the question then becomes, how can we build a good end board if we can't summon dark monsters? Because that does mean we're not able to summon our Ilia, Sylvia, Omni Negate. Azamina monsters are all dark, so we can't summon them. So looking to the OCG is sort of helpful, but also not helpful, because the OCG has 2 very obvious conclusions that they can bring, that being Baronne de Fleur and Appaloosa, both of which are wind monsters that we can't use in this deck because they're both banned. So unfortunately for the TCG, the obvious solution, of course, is we're just going to be playing Fiendsmith cards, because Fiendsmith is all lights. And I do think now that the Fiendsmith cards have been reprinted, it's a lot more affordable. You only need to play 1 Engraver and 1 Lacrima in the main deck in order to get the full value of this engine. The rest of the cards are pretty cheap. However, there was a recent regional where they won the regional playing 2 Engraver, 1 Lacrima, and 1 Sanct. A Sanct, of course, is the alternative spell card to Tract. Tract, of course, being a really expensive card, but Sanct is a common, so it's really affordable. I think that version of the deck is actually quite... that version of the package is quite nice, because it also cuts Lurry from the deck, which is kind of a brick. Particularly in this deck, because our normal summon is super important, so we don't really want to normal summon Lurry. Especially in this version of the deck where we can search a lot more monsters, which means we're getting to Silvy more often, and we always want to normal summon Silvy if possible. So from here, we're going to talk about what our extra deck can do. So assuming that we've already resigned our fate to the Fiendsmith cards, what cards are now mandatory, of course? So of course, there's the 2 Azamina monsters and the 3 White Forest fusions from before, plus the 2 new Synchro monsters, giving us a total of 7 cards from the new engine, and then 4 for the Fiendsmith, what pushes us at 11. So we have 4 free slots for other options. So one such option, which I've seen people do, is play the Crimson Dragon plus Cosmic Blazer plus Cross Sheep package. Cross Sheep is needed for some of the combo lines I'll show you in later on in this video. And then the other card, of course, is Selene, which I think is now a mandatory card with the new cards, and I'll show you why in the following few combos. So that really only gives us 3 free slots to play with, assuming that these cards are all mandatory, which is 7 plus 5, which is 12, so we only get 3 free slots. So if we're doing the Cosmo Blazer package, it's going to be exactly these 3 cards. If not, there's a couple of other cool options. One of my particularly favorite options is the Saint Azamina plus Moa Regina package, which is a 2-card package. So that gives us a 3rd card to play with, which could be like an SP Little Knight, or the Agnum Day, or the Chaos Angel. So this package gives us slightly different options with more flexibility for that last slot for what you think is important in the matchup. Of course, Chaos Angel is super good, especially if you're playing the Fiendsmith cards. It helps you play through boards because it makes all your synchros unaffected, which is super strong. Agnum Day is super strong. It's a little less necessary in this iteration of the deck because we have a lot more spell and trap cards to send, but it's still an option. SP Little Knight, of course, is always a great option because she's a strong card. IP is really cool if you start with specifically Wanted and don't have access to your other engine, but of course I think it's the worst card here because you have to play it with SP, so that is a 2-card package. And then, of course, if you want to do that, you could, of course, cut these 2 fusions and play Discarding Chimera as another interruption, something like this. So these are all sort of like cards. I think, assuming these 12 cards are mandatory, up here, and then our flex slots are 3 cards, so it could be a Typhon as well. Always an option, because you never know. Could be, it's sometimes nice against Ryzel. But yeah, if you're playing the Crimson Dragon, it has to be these 3 cards, but if you're not, then you have a lot more options between Typhon, SP, Chaos Angel, Agram Day, Guardian Chimera, and the Azamina package. So for, I guess, this video, I'm going to just use these. For the first combo, we're going to just talk about these 2 cards because some of you may not really know what this does. So for our flex spot, it doesn't really matter because we're not going to summon it, so we're just going to put in Chaos Angel, I suppose. Okay, and I'll show you. So the combo is going to be with these cards, and I'm going to show you how these 2 cards can be really impactful. So I'll show you that combo after this cut. Okay, so welcome back. So for this combo, we're going to be talking about Silvy plus 1 monster. Monster because it's the weaker of the cards we can have as extra cards. There's also like the pure Silvy 1-card combo without needing a additional card, but that's weird to consider because you'll always have 5 cards in hand when you start your turn. So you're going to have at least a monster or a spell and trap. And of course, the spell and trap card is a lot easier to work with because you can just pitch it for your first RCLS summon, but you can't do that if you just have a monster to send. So for this example video, we're going to use a monster as an example because it's a lot harder, and I'll show you the lines. So you're going to start with normal summon Silvy, add Tails. We're going to activate Tails in order to add LZ Azamina, the White Forest. We're going to use her own effect to summon herself and then perform a synchro summon into our RCLA. Now again, no effect because we don't have a spell and trap card to discard, otherwise discarding it here would be really nice. But in either case, LZ Azamina is going to add Deception. We're going to activate the Deception. Now we contribute our extra monster to add Hollowed Azamina to our hand. And next we're going to use Hollowed Azamina, sending the Deception to summon the Mu Arcealago. The Mu Arcealago is going to search the Wanted, and then we're going to add back the Hollowed Azamina by shuffling back our LZ into our deck. So from here, we're going to activate our Hollowed Azamina and chainlink to Wanted to add Diabellstar to our hand and summon our Ilia Sylvia. So this is just like pre-Alliance Insight, the same exact combo I've done before. The reason why we want to start this way is because this gets Ilia Sylvia as our 5th summon, so this completely plays around Nib, and we can still get our full end board, so there's no reason not to do so. So from here, we're going to link these 2 cards off into Moon of the Closed Heaven. We're going to link that off into Requiem, and we're going to send away Requiem in order to summon Lacrima. Lacrima is going to dump Engraver. So from here, we're going to activate the effect of Requiem to equip, and then we can now send it away as a free material for this Diabellstar, which will then set Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, which is the fusion spell. So from here, things will get really interesting because we're going to shuffle back, you want to shuffle back Moon of the Closed Heaven specifically, you'll see why later, to summon back this Engraver. And so this Engraver now, on the field, we'll have 3 bodies, and that's really important because we can now link all 3 of these away into Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians, because Diabellstar, of course, is a spellcaster. And we have 4 spells in our graveyard, so that's the reason why we want to equip the Requiem and send the Requiem instead of banishing the Wanted, because we want to keep these spells in our graveyard for the counters. And we can always shuffle this back later to get a draw. So now we're going to be able to use 3 of our counters to summon back the Arceala, whose effect triggers on special summon, not synchro summon. So now we can use it to send away our Sinful Spoils of the White Forest in order to add the field spell, and of course the fusion spell is going to reset itself to the field. Okay, so from here we're going to simply activate the Witches of the White Forest to add Elza to her hand. We're going to send away the field spell in order to summon herself and add Diabell's the White Witch to her hand, and then we can simply synchro summon these 2 cards into Diabell Queen, which will add back any spell or trap card. So you can add back a spell or trap card for follow-up if you have an additional card to send for this Diabells. Otherwise, we can just simply send this card that we just sent to summon the Diabells, which will of course send the Curse of Diabell from our deck to our graveyard, which will trigger and then add our Filius Diabell, which we can use to add our Diabellstar, the Diabellstar Vengeance to our hand. So from here, we're going to link away these two cards again into Moon of the Closed Heaven. This card, you can summon it multiple times. You know, you didn't use its effect or anything. And the reason why that's important is because now we can shuffle back our RCLF for our Silvy, summon it back to the field in order to link these two off into Fiendsmith Sequence. Fiendsmith Sequence can now shuffle back the Moon, the Lacrima, and the Requiem. So this keeps Engraver in our graveyard for follow-up, so that's really cool for this combo. And of course, it's going to shuffle back all these cards in order to summon our Fiendsmith Desiree. So from here, we can just simply use the effective sequence to equip to our Desiree. If you're playing Agnum Day, then you could summon Agnum Day here for an additional spell and trap card to send, but otherwise you can always just equip it here. And then lastly, we're going to summon our Sin Adjudicator by banishing our Diabell spell and trap card. And then the very last thing, of course, is to banish the Wanted, to put back the Deception and draw an additional card. So we actually end up with the same amount of cards as we started with in our hand, just using the one Silvy. So from here, there's a decent amount of interruptions. So first we have our Omni Negate, that's one interruption. We have our Silvy, which is two interruptions. We now have the Diabell to send a spell or trap card to get our Silvy, which is our third interruption. And then next we have Sinful Souls of the White Forest. We can fuse these two cards in order to summon Saint Azamina, which requires just a level 6 and higher fusion and synchro monster. So these are level 6 and higher fusion and synchro monster. Doesn't matter the typing, which is really helpful here. And here we can trigger the Desiree as our fourth interruption. Shuffling back these two. Oh, of course, when we summon the Silvy, don't forget, the LZ goes back to our hand, so that's technically follow-up. So that is going to be our fourth interruption, if I counted it correctly. Yeah, one, two, three, so 1, 2, 3, 4, yep. And our fifth interruption, we can summon out we can use the effect of Saint Azamina here to summon out Moa Regina. You can also summon out, instead of Moa Regina, you could also play Sol Erysichthon, whatever guy, which sends a card on the field to the graveyard. So we're going to say that is our fifth interruption, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth interruption here. Diabellstar effects to pop a card, that's our fifth interruption, and because it's a Sinful Spoils card, that will trigger the Moa Regina, and the Moa Regina will be able to chain link to any Azamina or Sinful Spoils card. This is considered a Sinful Spoils card to pop 2 more cards, so that's popping 3 cards with one effect. You could say it's like 5.5, I guess, if you want, but we're just gonna say 6 because there's 6 individual cards. This will summon out the Mystic Mystery of the White Forest, and then you could quick synchro these 2 cards. You can actually quick synchro any of these 3 cards because these are all level 8s. We're just going to go with this one for this video and to summon the Snake Eyes Execute Dragon. And the Snake Eyes Execute Dragon can push a card into the Spawn Trap card zone as our 7th interruption. And alternatively, instead of summoning the Mystic Mystery, we could always bounce back Silvy to our extra deck with Silvy of the White Forest effect. And then instead of summoning the Mystic Mystery, we could summon Silvera instead. So we can have a second Book of Eclipse if we wanted to. So either way, it's 6.5 to 7 interruptions depending on how you're counting. And then in terms of follow-up, this card of course is follow-up in our hands, as long as we have another spell and trap card, which is relatively easy in this deck, especially if you had summoned the If you had summoned the Mystic Mystery, this card also allows you to put Sinful Spells cards in your spell and trap zone. So you can actually put, like, for example, this, these two cards in our spell and trap card zone, for example. So on the following turn, after like this board has settled, we now have free spell and trap cards to send for this card to summon itself. And then of course this is a White Forest card, so putting Silvy here is fine because we can still summon back this Silvy by shuffling back this White Forest card. So this guarantees a level 6 synchro play, right? By, you know, sending one of these into summoning back our Arciella, and then Arciella can send this other spell and trap card. So it's like pretty much guaranteed follow-up, pretty much, which is really cool. And that I didn't even consider searching with the White Forest for another monster. So that's really cool. So you can search another Silvy, and you can normal summon that Silvy to get the field spell, and yada 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 yada. The other additional piece of follow-up for this deck, of course, is that Engraver is still in our graveyard, which usually when you summon Fiendsmith Desiree, this card won't be in your graveyard anymore, but in this combo line, he still is. So that's also really cool follow-up. Next, we have Moa Regina. Moa Regina can just straight up summon back a illusion monster. So you can, if they don't out this card, then you can start your first action, summon back Ilia Sylvia because it's an illusion monster, and now you've started your turn with an Omni Negate. And that's not even considering the other cards you can summon. This is an illusion monster. This is an illusion monster. I mean, technically this is an illusion monster, but it doesn't really have an effect unless you fusion summon it, so it's not really an option, but this of course is really great. And this is like pseudo interruption because Saint Azamina makes it so that your opponent cannot target this card or their own cards, which for some decks makes it really hard for them to play, especially if they have just a simple effect like target a card in the graveyard to summon it back or something like that. So in a lot of cases, it can be a really strong card. For example, this card straight up takes care of the entire Fiendsmith package, because all the Fiendsmith cards target in terms of meaningful interruption, like the Engraver. So both, like all the Link monsters need to target to equip, so they can no longer equip anything. So what that means is Engraver can no longer send anything. Engraver, of course, also targets, so that doesn't matter. Desiree needs to target a card on the field, so Desiree can't send anything. The Desiree Negate is non-targeting, but there's no way for them to equip the Desiree, because in order to equip they need to target. So that's out of the package. They could summon a Chaos Angel. Chaos Angel also targets, so that also doesn't work. And the Chaos Angel can't attack over this card because it's 4,000 defense, so it's like really hard to out this card. Detonator can't pop this card. Can't even attack over this card because it's so high defense. And in any combo line where you summon this Saint Azamina and you still have Diabells on the field, Diabells has a secret effect, whereas if you control another Diabell monster, monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. So if you have something even as simple as just this, like let's say you get interrupted along the way, or like you have something like this. This Diabell Queen is also a Diabell monster. Like any of these 4 monsters, as long as you have 2 of them on the field, it means your monsters can't be destroyed by card effects. Especially if you summon them in attack, they'll all get plus 500 from this spell card, which puts them all at 3,000 attack, which makes them really hard to out because they're 3,000 attack monsters that can't be destroyed by card effects. Super hard to deal with. They have to basically crash in order to out any of them, so that's really annoying. Obviously, they don't want to crash this Diabell Star because she will just come back to the field. And that's even worse for them if she's on the field with like a Desiree and so on and so forth. I'm rambling, but these cards are really cool, so that's just something to consider with this package. But for our next video, we're going to talk about the other option. So the other option, of course, is playing these 3 cards: the Crimson Dragon, the Cosmic Blazer, the Cross Sheep. And we'll show you that combo line in this following clip. Okay, for our next combo, this is going to be with the Crimson Dragon package in our extra deck. So for this combo, we actually need to have 2 cards in our hand to start with. Once again, 2 monsters is in this example because if we have our spell or trap card, then we can just discard that with our initial Arceala summon. But just like in the previous combo, we're going to be summoning back our Arceala off of Celine instead. So we're going to normal summon Silvy. Silvy is going to add Tails. We're going to activate Tails to search LZ. We're going to special summon LZ with her own effect, and then synchro summon into our Arceala. LZ's going to activate to add our Deception, and then we're going to activate our Deception and tribute one of our monsters in hand in order to add the Hollowed Azamina. We're going to activate the Hollowed Azamina, sending away our Deception in order to fusion summon into our Mu Arcealago, which will then trigger to add a Wanted to our hand. Next, we're going to add the Hollowed Azamina back into our deck by shuffling back this LZ. And then we're going to activate Hollowed Azamina, chain Wanted to add the Diabellstar, and then fusion summon into our Ilia Sylvia. So just like before, this gets Ilia Sylvia onto our board as our 5th summon so we can play around Nibiru. So here's where things get a little bit interesting. We're going to link away these 2 monsters in order to summon Cross Sheep. And now we can summon our Diabellstar, pitching another extra card from our hand in order to summon the Diabellstar, which will trigger the Cross Sheep and the Diabellstar to set our Sinful Spells of Morian, and summon back a level 4 lower monster, which in this case is our Silvy. So we're going to use Morian here because we don't have enough extra deck space in order to put more fusions in. So this is just an interruption without needing a fusion in our extra deck to summon. So next we can link away our Cross Sheep and our Diabellstar into Celine. And just like before, there are 4 spell cards in our graveyard, which means Celine has 4 counters, which will remove 3 in order to summon back our Arceala. Arceala is going to trigger, sending away our spell or trap card in order to add the field spell to our hand. Okay, then we're going to add the field spell in order to search for LZ. We're going to activate the LZ, getting rid of our field spell in order to search and summon herself. So we're going to search the White Witch here. And then from here, we're going to link these 2 away into our Diabell Queen. Queen is going to add back any spell or trap we want. The Tails here is good for follow-up, so we're going to add that to our hand. And from here, we're going to link away these 2 monsters in order to get Moon into Requiem. Requiem is going to summon our Lacrima, and Lacrima is going to dump our Engraver. Next, we can use the effect of Requiem to equip to our Lacrima, and then now we can summon our Diabells by sending away our Requiem. So here the Diabells is going to trigger to send our trap card. Sorry, I didn't set this up. Curse of Diabell, which will add the Filius Diabell, which we can then use to search for Diabellstar Vengeance. So we're here now. Next, we're going to summon back the Engraver by shuffling back any of our Light Fiends. It doesn't matter in this case. And then we're going to link away our Lacrima and our Engraver in order to go into Sequence. And Sequence is going to shuffle back the rest of our Light Fiends, which is the Engraver, the Lacrima, and the Sequence, or not Sequence, Requiem, in order to summon our Desiree. So from here, we can summon, we can use the Sequence effect to equip to our Desiree directly from the field, and then we can summon back our Silvy, which we haven't done yet with her own effect, by shuffling back this Arceala. And then we can synchro these 2 cards, which is a 4 and an 8, in order to summon a Crimson Dragon. And then finally we can banish our 2 Diabell cards in order to summon the Diabellstar Vengeance from our hand. That's our final piece of interruption. And then, of course, don't forget, we also have our trap card, which can reset itself to the field. And of course, we have an extra draw now with Wanted. Putting the Deception back in order to draw an additional card. So we did have to use 2 cards, but we do get 2 cards back at the very end, including a guaranteed spell or trap to send with the Diabell. So how many interruptions is this? It's a little bit different, but it's still very similar in its own way. So we have 1 interruption here. We have 2 interruptions here, sending this away to get our Silvera. This will set itself back to the field. Our 3rd interruption with Fiendsmith Desiree. Our 4th interruption with this Book of Moon. Our 5th interruption is going to be this Adjudicator, or sorry, Diabellstar Vengeance. So that's 5. And then our 6th interruption, of course, is going to be Synchro Summoning into our Execute Dragon, which can then use its effect to pop a card. And then our 7th interruption is this Crimson Dragon tagging out into the Cosmic Blazar, which is another Omni-Negate, for a total of 7 interruptions. Plus, if they somehow out this Desiree, that becomes an 8th interruption. And if they go to the battle phase, then we have our Execute Dragon to pop a card as our 9th interruption. So it's 7 guaranteed interruptions plus 2 potential interruptions. So it's a little bit of a higher ceiling, but then you're playing literally every card out of your extra deck. Whereas the previous combo is, it's still 7 interruptions, or it's like 6.5 interruptions if you count the Diabellstar pop plus the Moa Regina as 1 kind of interruption. It's a little bit depending. That one has a little bit more flexibility. I mean, they both have kind of flexibilities on which cards you want to activate when. But it's more guaranteed for some of the effects like sending Desiree to the graveyard. So that one is more of like a 6.5 plus 1 if they go to the battle phase for the Execute Dragon. This one is a guaranteed 7 plus potentially 2. So those are the differences. There's also slightly different follow-up. Of course, in this deck, the follow-up is the Tales of the White Forest, which is added back to your hand. Of course, or it could be the Witches of the White Forest. It's just the card you add back with the Diabellstar becomes your follow-up. And then for the other version, you have Fiendsmith Engraver still in your graveyard, which is its own own follow-up as well. And in both of these combos, you don't have to shuffle back the Deception. The Deception could just come back, and that could be follow-up for the Azamina cards. And of course, alongside that, if you have another trap card, then you could summon back the Diabellstar Vengeance by banishing another trap card. Alright, welcome back. So for this final combo, I want to talk about what we can do with just the field spell, because once again, we're locked out of dark monsters from our extra deck, which means we're not going to be able to summon Ilia Sylvia / an Omni-Negate. So with this 1-card combo, we're going to activate the field spell. We're going to activate add LZ to our hand. We're going to summon the LZ, sending away the field spell. This will add Silvy to our hand. We're going to normal summon Silvy. Silvy's going to add Tails to our hand. So this is quite similar to how you would start if you had LZ plus any spell or trap card. This combo is going to be a little bit different because we don't have access to dark monsters. So we don't necessarily want to get into Deception. Although we could if we wanted to. We can Synchro Summon into our Silvy. Arciela rather, and discard this Tails in order to add Diabell's the White Witch. Tails is going to reset itself to the field, and then we're going to just activate it in order to add LZ Azamina the White Forest. Still a really good card to have because we're going to summon it and then just synchro it away in order to get Diabell Queen, and we're going to trigger LZ and Diabell in sequence to add the Wanted for our deck to our hand and add back any spell or trap. Next, of course, we can just activate the Wanted to search for our Diabellstar, and then we can summon Diabellstar by pitching that spell card we just added back. It's a free card, and that is going to set our Sinful Spoils of the White Forest to our field. So next we can send that to the graveyard to summon our Diabella the White Witch, which will then trigger on field to send Curse, and the Sinful Spoils of the White Forest is going to reset itself to the fields. Curse is then going to add Filius Diabel, and then we can use that, of course, to add Diabel Star Vengeance. So from here, we're going to just, we have these two monsters. So an option here is you could summon back the Silvy here to synchro summon into the level 12. If you want to, you don't have to. I like to just get rid of these two cards to summon Moon of the Closed Heaven into Requiem, Requiem into Lacrima, Lacrima, dump Engraver, and then from here Engraver can summon back, shuffling back Moon. Alternatively here, instead of shuffling back Moon, you could also summon back Silvy here, which I'm going to use for this example. In case you do get nibbed along the way, you could bring Silvy back by shuffling back this Diabel, and then synchro summoning into Diabel again as a sort of interruption form. But otherwise, if you bring this back by shuffling back the Arciela, you can then link these two off into sequence, and then because we didn't need to shuffle back an extra fiend, we have an extra fiend in our graveyard, which means we can keep the Engraver in the graveyard for follow-up. So that's a really nice little trick here, right? So we'll leave the Engraver in the graveyard, and we're going to summon our Desiree, and then we're going to equip our sequence to our Desiree, and then finally we're going to summon our Diabel Star Vengeance by banishing our two Diabel cards. And lastly, we still have our Wanted to draw an additional card. So it's pretty much the same board as the other combo. The only difference now is we don't have Ilia Sylvia, which is our Omni Negate, right? So in terms of interruption, it's pretty similar. We have the Desiree to negate a card. That's one interruption. We have our Diabel, and now we can send this to get our Silvera, which is our second interruption. Then we have Sinful's, right, don't forget, I always forget, but you also add back the LZ here because we summoned a tuner, monster, spellcaster tuner to our fields. And then we can have our Sinful Spoils of the White Forest here, so we can, like before, link the, fusion these two away to summon our Saint Azamina, because these are level 6 or higher fusion and synchro. And so that is our third interruption, because the Desiree will shuffle back our sequence in order to send a card from field to the graveyard. So that's one. Sorry, how many interruptions is that? 1, 2, 3. And then our fourth interruption is going to be the Saint Azamina can summon any level, I think it's 10 or lower, or 8 or lower. 9 or lower Azamina monster from our deck or extra deck. So we have a couple of options here. Of course, we can just summon Ilia Sylvia, which is an Omni Negate. Or we could also summon our Moa Regina, because once again, this Diabel Star is also a Sinful Spoils card, which will trigger this effect to pop. But Omni Negate is generally the way to go most of the time, so we're just going to say the Omni Negate. So that is our fourth interruption. And then finally we have the Diabel Star as our fifth interruption to pop a card. And that, of course, is also going to summon our Mystic Mystery of the White Forest. And then this card can trigger to put back some of our White Forest into their spawn trap card zone for follow-up. And then we're going to quick synchro these two away into our Snake Eyes Execute Dragon, which will then be able to push a card into the spawn trap card zone as our sixth interruption. So pretty much the same exact thing, except we kind of lose one interruption through the Ilia Sylvia. It's just delayed to another turn, which means we can't summon a different type of interruption like Sol or Moa Regina. So with that one card, it's like almost the exact same end board. Like, it's really powerful. We have follow-up, we have guaranteed Engraver, we have guaranteed LZ, we have guaranteed Silvy, we have hollowed Azamina add back in order to summon Sylvia as our first action. It's like all those things have everything going for it. So that's why the field spell is just as powerful. The only downside, of course, is because you're not summoning Sylvia, you are a bit more prone to Nibiru. Some people are playing Nibiru because it's somewhat good against Malice as well, so that's just one thing to be aware of. But yeah, so that covers it for this video. I hope you enjoyed a couple of these combos. I do think this Saint Azamina package is the more powerful combo, just because it layers your interruptions in a way where you can actually control when you want to send the Desiree and stuff like that. You have a little bit more flexibility on the order of which cards you want to use. Whereas with the Crimson Dragon stuff, you have to wait until you use the Diabellstar pop in order to summon. It does force this line, right? So if you're on the Cosmic Blazer stuff, then you're forced to summon Mystic Mystery in order to make a level 12 synchro, which you do want to do most of the time, but at least with the other routes you do have the option of summoning Silvera twice, because Silvera's effect to Book of Eclipse the field is not once per turn. So having the option to Book of Eclipse your opponent twice is a really nice option that you get with this package, and a little less so with this package, unless you're, you know, running some other card targets for Crimson Dragon, like for example the Wind level 8 synchro, the Stardust was it Crystal Wing or something that negates a monster effect. I forget. It's just tough because you don't have a lot of space, whereas this package is only 2 cards instead of 3 because you don't have to run the Cross Sheep, which I think is not really something you want to run. And then alternatively, of course, you could just not run this package and then just synchro into an Execute Dragon on your turn as an interruption. That's also an option. But I've been like looking at this Saint Azamina card, and I've been liking it ever since I saw people play it in the regional and kind of explain that this card is actually a lot easier to summon, especially with this card. And I really love the interaction where you could forcibly send Desiree to make this card, and this card can summon it can summon a pop, it can summon a send, it can summon an Omni Negate, and it also prevents your opponent from targeting stuff, which shuts off Fiendsmith. So it's like a really cool card that has really good applications in this format, and it requires less cards in your extra deck, so you can play a lot of other cool stuff. So that about covers it for now, I suppose. Also, the other cool thing about this is that it makes your opponent take battle damage. So it is a way to beat Chaos Angel by just ramming your stuff into Chaos Angel, because Chaos Angel has 3500 attack, so they'll take a lot of damage. And this has 0, so they'll take 35 from just this. That about covers this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, concerns, leave it in the comments below and I'll try to address them. Otherwise, I'm actually not going to be playing much of this format because I'm going to Japan, but maybe when I'll get back, we'll see some cool stuff. Good luck, guys, and see you in the next one.